Welcome to Calf Academy, your source for calf care education.
This module is entitled Colostrum Management. Before we discuss colostrum management, it's essential that we discuss the day of birth in the calf's life. A healthy calf starts with a healthy birth. Starting with a healthy birth can present challenges because adapting to external life is a huge transition for the calf. There are lots of physiological parameters in the calf that are influenced and affected at birth. The respiratory, cardiovascular, metabolic, fluid balance, thermoregulation, musculoskeletal, and neurologic systems all transition from functioning through the umbilical cord to life outside the uterus. There are several challenges that can affect the calf at birth. One is dystocia, or difficult birth. One is premature birth, where the calf doesn't make it the full 280 days of gestation, is born before that, or if the cow or heifer that is giving birth is sick at the time of birth. Dystocia occurs in several levels. Severe dystocia, where surgical extraction or mechanical extraction are required, occurs 6.8% of the time in heifers and 3.5% of the time in cows. Mild dystocia occurs in 11.8% of the heifer births and 7.3% of cows giving birth. No dystocia or assistance provided anyway occurs 12.4% of the time when heifers are giving birth and 9.8% of the time when cows are giving birth. Dystocia occurs when calving takes too long. Calving or parturition, the preliminary stages, should take about 4 hours. The second stage, or hard labor, should take about 2 hours in first calf heifers and take about 1 hour in cows that have had more than one calf. Whatever the conditions are at calving, whether dystocia or long-term parturition, a scoring system should be implemented to keep track of the calves that have difficult births. The calf's birth event should be scored, 1 meaning no help, 2 meaning required assistance, or 3 being dystocia or difficult birth. One way to do this is to write on 1, 2, or 3 on the back of the calf's ear tag. This will allow the calf raiser to know which calves experienced a difficult birth, as these calves will present health challenges throughout their life. Another timing issue that needs to be noted at calving is the time from birth till sternal recumbency. Sternal recumbency is defined as when the calf gets up off its side and lays on its sternum with its feet underneath, and then begins to try to stand. If this period of time takes more than 15 minutes from birth to sternal recumbency, those calves have been shown to present health challenges throughout their life. They recover more slowly from acidosis, they experience higher levels of mortality, and exhibit several health challenges throughout their life. Other challenges when the calf is born that can occur are asphyxia with trouble breathing. It's necessary that you stimulate breathing if asphyxia occurs. Ways to stimulate breathing are vigorous rubbing with a dry towel, nostril stimulus with a piece of straw or your finger, assisted breathing with an oxygen tank and mask. Another challenge at birth is body temperature. The calf needs to get dry quickly and be in deep, fluffy, dry bedding as they don't have subcutaneous fat to insulate them. A calf jacket is also used in cold temperatures, and the calf needs to be protected from drafts or wind. After the calf is born and has exhibited sternal recumbency and all the issues of the birth event have been addressed, it is time to consider colostrum or passive transfer. Passive transfer is defined as the period of time when the calf can transfer antibodies from the colostrum that it's fed to the bloodstream to build the calf's humoral immunity. Passive transfer is important. The calf needs to transfer a significant amount of antibody from the colostrum to its bloodstream to achieve passive transfer. It is important that calves receive passive transfer. In this section, we will discuss passive transfer, the importance of passive transfer. We'll discuss that feeding colostrum right is not easy, the difficulties and challenges of achieving passive transfer with maternal colostrum, and then why one might consider a colostrum replacer that meets the management goals of achieving passive transfer and supporting research. Colostrum and passive transfer. When a calf is born, we only have 2 opportunities to control disease on the calf operation. The first area is to affect the calf's immunity or enhance the calf's immunity. That's the calf's ability to fight off disease. Ways to enhance immunity are colostrum, vaccination, and nutrition. Another major way to control disease on a calf operation is the pathogen load. Pathogen load is defined as the number of disease-causing bacteria and viruses that are presented to the calf. Reducing the pathogen load can reduce disease on a calf operation. This can be achieved through biosecurity, sanitation, and proper housing. Addressing colostrum, it's important to know that achieving passive transfer is extremely important for the calf. Research has shown that calves that receive passive transfer have reduced treatment and mortality rates, improved growth rates and efficiency, decreased age at first calving, and increased first and second lactation milk production when compared to calves that do not achieve passive transfer. It's important that colostrum be fed correctly. Data from 2016 sale barn sourced calves has demonstrated that calves with high colostrum status showed a 2.2 pound increase in pre-weaning weight gain, 3.74 lower treatment costs per calf, a 12% reduction in mortality. The total economic benefit of receiving colostrum correctly is $23.07 per calf. Research data also shows that a high IgG status or a high antibody status or a significant amount of antibody entering the blood of the calf or achieving passive transfer results in a 52% reduction in death and culling loss and an 18.7 pound per day increase of milk production per 100 milligram of IgG or antibody per deciliter of serum. Research also demonstrated that feeding 4 liters of colostrum versus 2 liters of colostrum resulted in a reduction of $8 in pre-weaning treatment costs. Also resulted in over a 2,000 pound increase in first lactation milk production and over a 3,000 pound increase in second lactation milk production. Feeding colostrum is important to achieve passive transfer, but just feeding colostrum isn't enough. You have to feed colostrum correctly in order to achieve passive transfer, and feeding colostrum correctly is not easy. One potential issue with feeding colostrum correctly is that colostrum is one of the first potential exposures to pathogens. If you remember in an earlier slide, we said that reducing the pathogens that the calf is exposed to is one way to control disease on a calf operation. However, colostrum is one of the first potential introductions of pathogens to the newborn calf. Pathogens such as mycoplasma, Mycobacterium paratuberculosis, MAP, fecal coliforms, salmonella, bovine leukemia virus, or BLV, all of these can be introduced to the calf through colostrum. And colostrum-transmitted infection or disease can result in enteritis, septicemia, joint infections, ear infections, and subclinical infections that show up later in life, such as Johne's disease. Also, the second issue with pathogens in colostrum is that a high pathogen load in maternal colostrum can inhibit passive transfer, can reduce the amount of antibodies that the calf absorbs from the colostrum. So quality. What makes quality colostrum? Globulin or antibody concentration of 50 grams per liter of colostrum to be good quality colostrum. There's a couple ways to test for the quality of the colostrum. One is with a colostrum tester, or a colostrometer, which is a glass rod that floats in the colostrum. The second is a refractometer, which measures the optical density, which is correlated to the quality of the colostrum or the amount of antibody in the colostrum. Colostrum should be free of blood, debris, and mastitis. The colostrum should be disease-free, not from a cow known to have a particular disease, such as Johne's disease or mycoplasma. So quality. What makes quality colostrum? Globulin or antibody concentration of 50 grams per liter of colostrum to be good quality colostrum. There's a couple ways to test for the quality of the colostrum. One is with a colostrum tester, or a colostrometer, which is a glass rod that floats in the colostrum. The second is a refractometer, which measures the optical density, which is correlated to the quality of the colostrum or the amount of antibody in the colostrum. Colostrum should be free of blood, debris, and mastitis. The colostrum should be disease-free, not from a cow known to have a particular disease, such as Johne's disease or mycoplasma. A survey of multiple farms in Pennsylvania demonstrated an average IgG concentration of 41 grams per liter of colostrum. Remember, we said acceptable quality is 50 grams per liter. The range of IgG concentrations that went into that average were from 14.5 to 94.8 grams per liter of colostrum. Looking at the cow-to-cow variation, a single farm survey demonstrated that on the farm that had an average IgG concentration in colostrum of 71.7 grams per liter, had a range of IgG concentrations across cows at that farm going from 14.5 grams per liter of colostrum to 132.7 grams of colostrum. So there's significant cow-to-cow and farm-to-farm variation in colostrum quality. And you can't tell by looking at a cow whether it's high quality or low quality colostrum. You have to test it. Ways to measure colostrum quality are with a colostrometer. That measures specific gravity. It is a glass rod that floats in the colostrum, and the level at which it floats is dependent on the density of the colostrum, therefore, and that is correlated to the quality. However, there's two drawbacks of this system of the colostrometer for measuring colostrum quality. One is its thin glass rod that is not durable and breaks easily, and this can be problematic on the average dairy. The second is it's temperature sensitive. As the colostrum cools, it becomes more dense, and therefore the rod floats at a different level, and it'll give you false positives. A good rule of thumb is if the colostrum is fresh from the dam and is warm, and it registers on the border between yellow and green, when it gets cold, it'll read in the green zone or good, and it's okay to feed. The rule of thumb, too, is if the colostrum is fresh from a refrigerator or cold, and it registers on the border of yellow and green, then that colostrum, upon warming to the feeding temperature, will be well into the red or yellow zone, which means it's unacceptable, and it should not be fed to newborn pre-colostral calves. Another way that's less temperature dependent is the Brix refractometer. The Brix refractometer measures optical density, which is correlated to the percent antibody in the colostrum. Brix refractometer is durable, it's not temperature dependent, and a Brix reading of 22 indicates that the colostrum is of good quality and can be used. We stated that quantity is also important. The calf needs 10% of its birth weight in colostrum in order to achieve passive transfer. For an average sized calf, this is 3 quarts if fed by bottle of good quality colostrum. That will be 140 grams of IgG intake, which will be enough to achieve passive transfer. Interestingly, if the colostrum is fed to the calf by tube, whether it's a colostrum, maternal colostrum, or a colostrum replacer, the absorption of antibodies is not as efficient. Therefore, if you're feeding through a tube, to get the same results, you need to feed 4 quarts of colostrum to the calf to achieve passive transfer. We stated that quickness was important. One thing that needs to be quick is how quickly we collect the colostrum or milk the colostrum out of the cow after the calf is born. Research has demonstrated that as soon as the calf is born, the concentration of IgG in the colostrum of the cow begins decreasing as the colostrum is left in the udder. This occurs for 2 reasons. One is that antibodies are proteins and the cow reabsorbs them. Secondly, the cow is coming into her milk and she's diluting the antibodies. Research has demonstrated that in 6 hours, the concentration of colostrum in a cow reduces by 20 to 40%. Therefore, after the calf is born, it's goal to milk the cow within 4 hours. Many operations milk their fresh cows once or twice a day, and this is problematic for the cows that freshen shortly after the fresh cow milking will be more than 12 hours before the colostrum is milked. Therefore, they will have a reduced concentration of IgG in their colostrum. Another timing event that is critical with colostrum is how quickly it is fed to the calf. On the y-axis of this graph is the apparent efficiency absorption. The apparent efficiency absorption is determined by the efficiency at which the calf absorbs antibodies from colostrum to its bloodstream. If you look at the x-axis being the age in hours, the older the calf gets, the less efficient it is absorbing antibodies from colostrum to its bloodstream. By 12 hours after the calf is born, it only has 30% of the efficiency of absorbing antibodies that it would have had immediately after birth. So it is critical that you get the colostrum out of the cow quickly and feed it to the calf quickly, all within 4 hours of when the calf is born, for optimal concentration of IgG in the colostrum and optimal efficiency of the calf absorbing the antibodies from the colostrum. This is a visual representation of the IgG or antibodies entering the bloodstream of the calf from the small intestine or from the intestinal tract. You can see the passageways are open immediately after the calf is born for the antibodies to absorb from the wall of the intestinal tract into the bloodstream and affect the systemic immunity of the calf. After these passageways close, the IgGs are still active in the calf. They can bind pathogens in the intestinal tract and prevent them from binding at the intestinal tract where they cause damage. However, the opportunity for passive transfer and affecting systemic immunity has passed. The IgGs binding pathogens in the gut is called localized gut of colostrum cleanliness. Colostrum cleanliness can be determined by total plate count. Total plate count determines the amount of bacteria growing in the colostrum by microbiological determination. In order to be clean or acceptable, colostrum has to have a total plate count of less than 100,000 colony-forming units per mil of colostrum. The total coliform count needs to be less than 10,000 colony-forming units per mil of colostrum. Wisconsin herd survey data indicates that 82% of the samples of maternal colostrum had total plate counts greater than 100,000 colony-forming units per mil of colostrum. Johne's disease is of particular concern because it can be transmitted to the calf from a Johne's infected cow, and colostrum or waste milk are major vectors of Johne's disease organism. The same is true of bovine leukemia virus and other respiratory diseases. A study with 497 births on 12 Johne's endemic herds demonstrated that feeding a colostrum replacer reduced the risk of developing Johne's infection in Holstein calves born in Johne's endemic herds. This implies that feeding maternal colostrum may be a source of Johne's for calves. A way to reduce pathogens in colostrum and therefore reduce the negative effects on passive transfer as well as causing diseases in the calf is to pasteurize the colostrum. Colostrum cannot be pasteurized the same way we pasteurize waste milk, as that'll cause it to change physical property and destroy the antibodies. The proper way to pasteurize colostrum is at 60 degrees centigrade or 140 degrees Fahrenheit for 60 minutes. Another way to reduce pathogen introduction through colostrum is to feed a colostrum replacer. Recall that we stated how the importance of colostrum cleanliness is that high bacteria load in colostrum can introduce diseases to the calf and also interfere with IgG absorption or passive transfer. Sources of bacteria in colostrum are the infected mammary gland from a mastitis cow or an unclean cow when an udder that hasn't been cleaned before the colostrum is collected, fecal contamination in the colostrum or the collection equipment, dirty milking equipment, buckets or bottles that are used to collect the colostrum and feed the calf, and then growth or replication during storage. Remember, colostrum is an excellent media for growing pathogens. While it is sitting at room temperature, the pathogens and bacteria are reproducing exponentially. When determining whether to feed maternal colostrum or colostrum replacer, one must consider all of the steps to collecting and feeding maternal colostrum correctly to achieve passive transfer. The testing, the cleanliness of the feeding and equipment, the timeliness. If it's a diseased cow, it can't be used. If it's of low quality, it cannot be used. If it's got debris or blood or mastitis in it, it can't be used. All the steps in determining whether to use maternal colostrum or not and feed it correctly. An alternative is to skip all these steps. And again, it's not that these steps take a great deal of time or they're that difficult. It's that each step indicates an opportunity for failure and an opportunity for variance in your colostrum product and failure to achieve passive transfer. A colostrum replacer, alternatively, is you open the package, add the powder to a clean warm water, mix thoroughly with a whisk, and feed it through a clean nipple or bottle feeder. A colostrum replacer achieves the management goals of well-fed maternal colostrum. The quality, it's the same amount of IgG fed every time. The quantity, it's not dependent on what the cow gives. Quickness, you just open, mix, and feed. Cleanliness, there are fewer steps in which contamination can occur. And then biosecurity, there's reduced risk of colostrum-transmitted diseases such as Johne's, BLV, bovine leukemia virus, mycoplasma, and salmonella. Another note on the quantity is in order to achieve passive transfer, or 150 grams of IgG from maternal colostrum, you have to feed 2 quarts. Therefore, there is less likely to be a calf that won't drink the entire amount and have to be tubed. Other times to consider using a colostrum replacer are times when things get too busy on the dairy and colostrum protocols are not being followed, such as night births, new employees, or when corn's being planted or silage is being harvested and your help's really busy and does not have time to collect and feed colostrum correctly. Secondly, one should consider the financial analysis. There is a cost associated with using colostrum replacers. However, what does it cost to manage colostrum correctly? What does it cost to manage colostrum wrong and not get passive transfer? What does it cost to pasteurize colostrum so that it can be fed and be less dangerous? One needs to compare these costs to the actual cost of the colostrum replacer before deciding. Specifically talking about milk products colostrum source to make their colostrum replacers. Milk products colostrum replacers contain 150 grams of IgG per feeding. Research has indicated calves fed 150 grams of globulin protein or IgG demonstrate 100% successful passive transfer. There are 9 studies with 78 calves each. When 126 to 200 grams of globulin protein are fed, the average serum IgG is 14.5 milligrams per mil. The average efficiency of absorption is 36.7%, and 93.6% of the calves had serum IgG greater than 10 milligrams per mil, which is considered successful passive transfer. However, when greater than 150 grams of globulin protein are fed in one feeding, 100% of the calves achieve successful passive transfer. Milk products colostrum source is collected from grade A dairies. It is first and second milking colostrum. It is frozen, it goes through one freeze-thaw cycle, and then it's heat-treated by a proprietary process to eliminate pathogens. The dried bovine colostrum source, it is then put through a spray-dried process and becomes dry bovine colostrum source. Milk Products is the distributor of this product. Milk Products colostrum source. Colostrum ingredient has 50 to 53% IgG, crude protein 65 to 80%, crude fat 0.5 to 2%, and has ash of 3 to 6%. It is tested negative for major calf disease causing microorganisms such as E. coli, Salmonella, coliforms, Staph aureus, and Johne's disease. Some colostrum replacers contain First Defense. First Defense is a product made by ImmuCell, which is achieved by hyperimmunizing donor cows during the dry period for E. coli and coronavirus. The cow sheds a high concentration of antibodies for these two important calf diseases in their colostrum, and then the colostrum is collected and a spray-dried powder is made out of it. This spray-dried powder with concentrated antibodies for E. coli and coronavirus are added to colostrum replacers made by Milk Products. When looking at what we're doing to protect a calf by feeding it First Defense, by feeding it colostrum, is we're trying to get the calf's immunity enhanced as soon as it's born. The calf is born without an immune system or immunologically naive. By feeding it colostrum and achieving passive transfer and concentrating the antibodies with First Defense, we can have the calf's immunity at a high level at a very significant challenge period during the first few days of life. Another feature of Milk Products colostrum replacers is that they mix very well and mix easily due to a proprietary instantizing process. Other colostrum replacers on the market are more difficult to mix, and therefore dispersion and administration of the complete dosage of IgGs is not assured. And bottle feeding is difficult because the products that don't mix well don't feed well through a bottle.
Thank you for completing this Calf Academy course. If you have follow-up questions, please contact your Milk Products National Account Manager